Melody, welcome to A House for Arts. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
And thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have such an eclectic career, Melody. You're a poet, and you write books of poetry, and I understand you teach courses on the history of photography and art at Russell Sage College.
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit about your newest book, Ghostwriter, because I understand that it opens up with a personal story about your aging mother, but it's ultimately kind of a larger story about the ghosts that we all live with. Do I have that right?
I think you have that exactly right.
So tell us a little bit then about Ghostwriter.
Of course. I mean, ghosts, I don't believe in spectral bodies floating around saying boo. But memory, we all work with memory, right? And in times of stress, sometimes haunting memories can visit us. And that's what happened with me. My mother died of Alzheimer's in 2019. And the last 4 years were particularly difficult. Anyone who has been a caretaker for someone with Alzheimer's knows how horrible the disease is. And as I'm an only child, and so I really didn't, my family were supportive, but nobody really knew what it was like, because the past comes and sits with you, literally sits with you.
Like ghosts do.
Like ghosts do. So for me, that past was myself at age 8. And right after she had had an operation, it was a very difficult time, very difficult. I saw myself, now I'm not psychotic, but I projected myself, a kind of fictional me at age 8, sitting there right beside me and holding my hand. So that was obviously a comfort for me. It was a kind of doubling of myself, because who else would know? As you know, I was an only child.
Right.
And then it was so difficult that the poems just flowed out of me. And then the little girl, I call her the little girl, she emerged as character. So the first part of the book is a 3-way conversation between the little girl, my mom, and myself. Sometimes mom dictates all the poems, sometimes I do, sometimes the little girl comes in. Now, it really wasn't myself as I was at age 8. It was the way perhaps I wanted to be.
Right.
I projected back, so she was much smarter, wiser, and way snarkier than I ever was.
Well, we all do this, right? Especially when we deal with really big challenges or difficult situations, we have to kind of imagine a part of ourselves as something that can kind of be our inner companion and sort of help us step through these difficult situations.
So you have your own little girl.
Oh, I think we all have our own little girls or little boys, right? No, I mean, that's absolutely true.
A psychologist told me that. He said that that's a form of therapy, is to imagine yourself at an earlier time and you're sitting with yourself and that person is kind of coaching you through. Absolutely.
I think many of us can relate to that. And, kind of stemming a bit from that very difficult story, that difficult experience that you shared with us, there's also a poem in particular in that book too called Hors d'oeuvrerie. If I'm so sorry for my pronunciation, but I understand that this is about the ghosts of 9/11.
Yes, it is.
Right? I want to move a little forward too in time and history and think about, do you think, Melody, that this viral pandemic we're all living through right now, do you think it brings about its own set of ghosts, both on literal and symbolic levels?
I'm sure it has, and I'm sure it will. I just found out this week, 2 days ago, that my own daughter has COVID. She's okay. She's being well taken care of. But yes, I'm worried. Who wouldn't be, right? So many people are dying. It's heartbreaking. So many people are missing their loved ones. It's horrible. I think all of us are in a state of mourning, and even if we haven't lost someone, I think we feel like we're in mourning. Like you wake up and say, why am I so sad today? What's gone on that I should be so sad? It's mourning.
Yeah.
So yes, a sense of loss brings a kind of reflection, and a reflection brings a kind of distillation of the experience. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about ghosting, I'm talking about memories that haunt, that reoccur. So for me, at least as a writer, there has to be a bit of space, a bit of time as that distillation process happens. It's very akin to, say, writing history in a way. There's certain moments that come out. Mm-hmm. And that repeat themselves in your memory, and you can't forget about this moment or that moment. We have certain photographs in our collective consciousness that seem to distill or encapsulate a particular moment. too. Those are hauntings.
Right. I want to come back actually to this idea of memory and thinking about art more widely, because if poetry helps you sort of distill a memory and then make it alive again by revisiting it and having that sort of inner companion beside you, like you were mentioning before, do you think that visual art also gives us a language to do that? Like, do you see a connection at all between what you do as a poet and what you teach in terms of the history of art and photography in the classroom or what you write about?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the functions of art, to distill memory, to commemorate, to be a form where collective consciousness can settle, so that even if it is a fictitious form, say in painting, for instance, before we had photography, that's how people would recollect things, how we would come to a kind of collective agreement of, yes, that is how it was so, right? Mm-hmm. So these forms are, of course, imagined with painting, but they're also crystallizations of what a society wishes to believe had happened. Mm-hmm. Photography does that too. Although we often mistake photography for the real. Right. But it's still very much, it seems more real because it has real details, but it's just a construct that crystallizes a moment.
So let's talk a little bit then about photography and about these still images. I understand you also brought some different sort of tools and implements for us to look at, which is fantastic. Yeah, artifacts. So I know you've also written a book earlier on called Women's Views, and it's all about the 19th century stereograph. Mm-hmm. So I understand here you have a stereoscope, right?
I have a stereoscope.
Okay, so what is this? Because it shows a double image on a card, right? And you've got this sort of implement that you look into, and you can move the card back and forth. Melody, is this like the infamous early version of the selfie? Like, what are we looking at? What is the stereoscope?
A selfie. No, it's not a selfie. A selfie is a self-portrait, and it got to be really popular when cell phones became ubiquitous, and we could just do like this and commemorate ourselves everywhere, right? Make artifacts of our own face constantly. This is not a selfie. These are two photographs that are taken from a distance separation of 2.5 inches, and that mimics the interocular distance, that is the distance between the pupils of the eyes. Oh, so it works as our eyes do. And what happens when you put it in the stereoscope, or if you just free view it, by the way, free viewing is simply crossing your eyes. You can see these in 3D. This is 3D photography.
So who would have used this in the 19th century? Like, where would these have been used or displayed? Like, what's going on
They
with
would have
these?
been in homes.
Okay.
Okay, this was a product for the home. And what I write about is a particular type of stereograph. I call it the narrative stereograph, but you might call it a genre scene, a tableau vivant, comics and sentimentals. They tell a story, they show a scene, like a theatrical scene. And I write about these works in America from 1870 to 1910 is the operative dates. And these were products for the home. They were commercial photographs produced by companies, and they were big companies. And they were sold to the home.
So this is making me think, we are inundated nowadays with photographs and video clips on Instagram and social media of people, they're like taking videos of themselves going, trying a new recipe or a new makeup look, or what can scrolling through somebody's Instagram feed today tell us about, say, how people want to be seen by others, like this presentation you're talking about, or maybe even the role of women in society today?
Well, I'm rarely on Instagram, so I'm not going to answer to that. But I do get on Facebook. And yes, it's an entertainment, it's a release, it's a laugh. These were comical, they were sentimental. They were scenes that sold well. And when they sold well, they would make more titles in the same genre, right, in the same kind. And the companies proliferated, so they knew very, very well what people wanted to look at and who to sell to and how to sell to them.
And that's what advertisers do today, right?
Yes, these were marketed, and the target market was women at home. They did sell to men too. I don't want to say that men never bought these. Of course they did. They would sell to anybody who wanted to buy them, but their target market was women at home. So they knew what women wanted to see, and they knew how to place the product in the home so that it could be interesting, exciting, lively, and still remain with the family. So there's a whole genre of erotic scenes, for instance. Don't get too excited. It's erotic, all the clothes on. But it's coded. It's coded so the kids wouldn't know what was happening. But you'd know as an adult by reading the title and being able to read the signs, oh, I see what's happening, right?
Right.
So
That's fascinating.
It was definitely a measure of women's taste and acceptability and desires and how they wanted to see themselves.
Do you think that some social media feeds kind of indicate that too, that it shows maybe women's taste today
Oh,
or
yes,
what they
I'm
want
sure.
to present about themselves?
That's not my area, so I don't want to say any more, but
Sure.
you know, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what social media does? I mean, that's its kind of purpose, is to show us ourselves and variations of ourselves and how we settle into groups, and then we have the dangers of that too.
Right.
As we have recently seen this last month, when misinformation becomes like a cult.
And becomes a part of that kind of personality and that
Becomes a
creation of
cult,
personality
and
online.
we only want information from one source.
Right.
And that's a terrible danger, as we have seen.
It sounds like your research has a lot of cultural and political relevance today. Melody, thank you so much for being on House for Arts. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.